hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Right, so thank you very much for coming to this session. My name is Anna Vesvisi. I'm moderating this session on issues related to immigration to the EU, regional development and EU external policies. There are 3 speakers participating in this panel. We have decided each of the speakers will have about 10-15 minutes, so as to enable us to have a nice conversation afterwards. Let me introduce the speakers in the order that they'll be presenting. So we'll start with the presentation by Dr. Jolanta Szymańska from the Polish Institute of International Affairs, but also from the University of Warsaw. So Dr. Szymańska will be talking about the external dimension of the EU strategy toward the migration crisis. Then the next speaker will be Professor Vasile Kuczerescu from ex-Moldova, Jean Monnet Professor, highly distinguished professor, editor, and publisher. And the topic that Professor Kuczerescu will be talking about is the eastern border of the European Union in the migration paradigm. And last but not least, Dr. Martin Cesarz, Chair of the European Studies at the University of Warsaw. He'll be talking about the rise of EU migration technology, including the new electronic systems for external border. So without any further ado, let me invite our speakers and you to join the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jolanta Szymańska. I work in the Polish Institute of International Affairs and in the European Department of European Studies at the University of Warsaw. So in my everyday life, I connect this academic perspective with a more pragmatical one, and that's why today in my short introduction, actually, I would like to present this external dimension of EU strategy towards crisis, mainly from this political perspective, and just outlining at the same time the place of migration policy in ongoing debate about the future of Europe, because there were many questions during the first session about the future, and I think it's good to know different perspectives and different proposals on the future of migration policy. So, external dimension of migration strategy, we have to start from the migration crisis. And what I want to say at the beginning is that during the migration crisis, we could observe how the system of border protection in the European Union is weak and very dependent on national systems, national asylum and border protection systems. And the situation in Greece especially clearly proved that when national systems don't, in the frontline countries mainly, don't work effectively, ad hoc deployment of Frontex officers is not enough to fill this gap. That's why European Union presented some proposals for external actions in its agenda on migration in 2015. And among priorities, we could find border management, better border management. First, European Union focused on strengthening EU operations, Operation Triton and Poseidon in Italy and Greece, and later European Commission proposed also this idea of European Border and Coast Guard. Moreover, Commission initiated reforms in Justice and Home Affairs IT systems, reforming current existing systems such as Eurodac, Schengen Information System and Visa Information System, and proposing also creation of the new ones. But I guess Dr. Cesarz will deliver on this topic, so I will leave the space for him on this topic. The other priority was to fight migrant smugglers, the general model of action of migrant smugglers in southern Mediterranean region, and here mainly this Operation Sophia was the tool to fight this phenomenon. The operation was set up in 2015, and the next priority was cooperation with third countries, both countries of origin and countries of transit, and the main aim of this cooperation was to reduce the incentives for irregular migration. And here, European Union countries focused mainly on cooperation with transit countries, especially Libya and Turkey. And of course, European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, proposed also the special partnership with Africa. We also could see some, let's say, controversial proposals, such as idea of migrant processing centers in the third countries. We already mentioned this topic. This idea was supported actually by the European Council in 2018. And here you have some proposals, and now what was the European activities. Since the peak of crisis, Frontex has strengthened its activities on European Union borders. Some temporary operations, but also more permanent operations. Currently, agencies coordinating 3 permanent operations in Spain, in Italy, and in Greece, and many temporary activities. In 2016, EU countries signed this famous deal with Turkey. The essence of this deal is to limit irregular migration. But Turkey was promised, from the other hand, financial aid to be used by Turkish government to finance projects for Syrian refugees. In 2016, member states decided to increase Frontex operational capacity, mainly Frontex budget, Frontex personnel, and Frontex equipment, because the lack of resources to carry out operations was considered as the main barrier to agency effectiveness when faced with migration crisis in 2015. But despite initial European Commission proposals from 2016, member states rejected the idea to give Frontex competence to replace national border guards in urgent situations. So we can say that the change of official Frontex name was not accompanied by a significant increase in its powers. The agency is still a kind of center for expertise and practical support for the border services of the member states. But thanks to this enhanced presence of Frontex and cooperation with third countries, European Union managed to reduce the number of illegal border crossings. In 2018, the total number fell to 150,000 level, so 92% below the peak of crisis in 2015. So you can see it on this slide, how the situation has improved. But so taking only into consideration statistics, we could say that we came back to the level from the pre-crisis era, and we should be satisfied somehow. But statistics, of course, are not giving us the full picture of migration situation, because this situation is still far from perfect, especially situation in Schengen. And here maybe I'm very pessimistic, but I would say, referring to previous panel, that I think that Schengen is still at risk because the crisis undermined the mutual trust between Schengen members. And as a result, since 2015, we have 6 members of Schengen zone still keeping controls on their internal borders, and moreover demanding a further loosening of Schengen border code. You can say that they even abuse current rules and want new reform of Schengen border code. And according to European Commission reports, Frontex is still regularly is facing the lack of personal and human resources, technical equipment for its operations. That's why the European Commission proposed this new regulation for Frontex in September 2018. The main aim is to give Frontex this stable corps of 10,000 border guards, available not only for rapid situations and operations, but also for regular operations, let's say. But concerning competences, we can say that current proposal doesn't go as far as the previous one, because Commission didn't mention in this project that replacing competences of member states by this new European agency. When it comes to border protection, we can say that we still miss the stable permanent solution. When it comes to Operation Sophia, in the previous panel, all the problems related with this operation were already mentioned. It's still not certain if this operation will still be in place, because there are many disputes and doubts of member states, and I think that conflict between Italian government and other partners in the European Union is also important in this discussion. European Union didn't manage to really establish migrant processing centers in neighborhood countries, so didn't manage to outsource this problem to the neighborhood countries. And that's why, because we still don't have real solutions on migration, this issue is very important in ongoing debate on the future of Europe. And here we can see many differences between member states, more differences than similarities. And what is the perspective of Macron, who is the most active actor when it comes to this debate? In his letter published 3 weeks ago, Macron was arguing that all those who want to be a part of Schengen should comply with obligations of responsibility and solidarity. So they should all agree to participate in a common effort to protect EU borders, but at the same time be a part of European single asylum policy with common acceptance and refusal rules under the authority of European Council for Internal Security. Macron and Merkel supported also in Magdeburg Declaration the idea to transform Frontex into European police guard. They didn't give us the clear answer what this body would be, but when I talk to my German friends especially, I think that they simply consider this body as a European body that protects European border, not only support member states in protecting external borders. Because of this mutual distrust in the Schengen zone, they would be rather opting for something, the European body that would limit this distrust. In Magdeburg Declaration, they also supported the idea of Dublin reform, adding also the proposals to establish a new European agency for asylum that would be responsible for processing applications loaded in, on external borders. Both Merkel and Macron support the idea of smart borders and cooperation with Africa. But of course, especially when it comes to cooperation with Africa and external and third countries, the issue of money is the key problem. And from the other hand, we have the Central European countries presenting completely different approach to migration challenges and opposing most of the Merkel's and Macron's ideas. The general V4 perspective is that we should focus our efforts on protecting external borders, so supporting Frontex operations, supporting neighborhood countries, not relocations, because relocations are considered as encouragement for further migrant arrivals. But although the general view is that we in V4 countries support border protection, they don't show enthusiasm about Macron's project of European border police, because they think that this project will simply affect member states' sovereignty, and moreover would be very costly. Poland, for example, is showing the National Police Guard as an example of effectively working system and cheaper than a European body. So the Polish officials argue that it's cheaper and more effective to keep the system on national level with only supporting role of Frontex. And of course, V4 countries emphasize also the need of cooperation with third countries, especially countries of origin and transit. And well, here we also can see some controversials because from the one hand we support all the deals like a EU-Turkey deal, but we should remember that EU-Turkey deal is about also relocating people from Turkey to member states, and with the problem of relocation in general, it's not so easy to fulfill this agreement in a longer term. That's why I would say that there are not so many areas where we can meet actually on migration. We all support, for example, cooperation with Africa. Even a Polish Prime Minister supported a new Marshall Plan for Africa. But from the other hand, we are entering debate about a new EU long-term budget, and we already can see many controversials about the size of this budget and spending on migration. So, it's my conclusion is that it will be very, very hard to find a common solution. That's why we are. I wouldn't be very optimistic by saying that crisis is behind. It's still ongoing problem. And I will stop here because we don't have more time. But I will be very happy to answer all your questions. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege and honor to be today with you in order to have an exchange of opinions on a proposed topic, and obviously sharing our research results in the field of migration. In the same time, I would like to thank cordially Professor Marta Pachocka for the invitation to participate in this conference. I'd like to propose to your attention the topic related to the eastern borders of the European Union. What happens around the eastern borders, near these borders, next to these borders, excepting inside the borders. For that reason, I will follow the following plan. First of all, a couple of words on EU policy acts, then the eastern borders route and migration management operated by the European Union, underlying the positive, challenging aspects of this issue. The first norms on migration in EU law are foundable in the primary law. It is about the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. Especially in the articles 79 and 80, the competence on migration, as you can see from the first line, so is a shared one. It means that both the European Union and member states have the right to legislate and operate in this field. The Article 79 of the treaty says that the European Union will develop a common immigration policy. To what extent this stipulation developed or not, you know better than me. Later on, there have been developed on this issue in different legislative acts, and here you have just a couple of them because it is impossible yet to enlist all of them. But the first and most important would be the global approach to migration and mobility that appeared in 2011. The second one that is a crucial seems to be the agenda on migration from 2015. And later on, yeah, from 2015 up to now, to 2019, many legislative acts were passed. The last one was elaborated at the beginning of this year, and it has a general theme or topic, managing migration. However, from the beginning, and even starting with the primary law of the European Union, later with the crisis, up to now, things seem, at first glance, that improved. But some statements, from 2015, belonging to Elizabeth Collett, seem to be actual or topical even now. So she suggested, that the legislation of the European Union needs, to have more investment, in leadership, being clearly stipulated. Then an improved coordination, is needed. Investment in human resources, monitoring, evaluation, and even the benchmarks have to be more practical than to be formal. All these major issues have been underlined a couple of years ago, but it seems that they are available and actual even nowadays. Now, let's see what happens at the eastern borders of the European Union in figures and in trends. For that reason, I would like to propose to you a dual approach, a legal and illegal practices one. But obviously, I will focus here on the challenging aspects more than on those that are positive and are quite clear for everybody. For sure that there is a shared opinion that the eastern borders of the European Union are hard borders, tough borders. There is a very serious border control. However, there are detected several illegal border crossings, and here I'd like to offer to your attention a couple of figures, a couple of numbers, to see what happens at this indicator, illegal crossings of the eastern borders. For instance, out of about 1,000 illegal crossings at the eastern border of the European Union have been identified about 5 migrants' countries of origin. They are Vietnam, Iraq, Russia, Ukraine, Turkey. What is quite curious is that the migrants that are enlisted in this about 1,000 illegal crossings belong to all continents of the world. They belong to more than 70 countries. There are even in the report, Frontex report written, persons or migrants with undeclared or unknown nationality. Now let's see what are the bordering countries on the both sides of the European Union and external border of the European Union, starting from north to south: Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. Later on, we will see that there are certain indicators related or more related to certain countries in comparison to others. And the external bordering countries are Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova. The longest borderline with the European Union has Russia, with about 2,400 kilometers. Then it is followed by Ukraine and Belarus. As regards countries or EU member states, the longest borderline has Finland. Yeah, then it comes Romania and then Poland. For sure that the eastern border of the European Union has a couple of specific characteristics. And here I would like to underline both the physical and the abstract characteristics or dimensions, as I have proposed here to you. Considering this double approach, obviously the border or the borders are very complex, bearing, first of all, a political aspect, the boundaries between the European Union and neighboring countries that you know. Here things are quite clear. Now let's move to the cultural border of the European Union, and it seems to be very complicated to make a clear delimitation, because the borders do not always correspond to identity or linguistic borders. And here we should remind that nowadays borders appeared in the result of the Second World War. And it happened that the border of the ex-Soviet Union was pushed to the west, and certain nationals of nowadays EU member states remained in the occupied territories by the ex-Soviet Union. Then the next border, which seems to be relevant to me, is the civilizational border, or the end of Europe. You know very well, throughout history, the East was regarded belonging to the barbarians, to the Mongols, or to the Russians. The dichotomy between civilized and uncivilized world seems to me that it lost its validity due exactly to the imprecise cultural borders. And here we have to speak about dislocated or resettled people, first of all Russians, especially to the Baltic, nowadays Baltic states, and a lot of other EU member states nationals that remained outside their national borders before the Second World War. And the last one that I would like to mention is the geopolitical border, a bridge between two security systems, Euro-Atlantic and Euro-Asiatic. Obviously, this geopolitical border raises or is characterized by very sensitive issues, and I call it even a sensitive border, because of the division or the fragmentation of the nations that live on the both sides of the eastern borders of the European Union. If we would go to see what is happening with the dynamics of the illegal border crossings for the last 10 years, we would identify, would see clearly that in general, the figures, the numbers are balanced, excepting the crisis year. When I say balanced, I don't mean the exact figure, but about the same figures. Then, a characteristic of this dynamics says that only a quarter of these illegal crossings refer to eastern countries. I mean, the Eastern Partnership countries. The rest, 3/4, belong to other community of independent states, Asia, and other countries of the world. The most cross borders, seem to be between Poland and Ukraine, Romania, and Ukraine too. Probably this is the easiest way of working on illicit underground aspects. The non-regional migrants usually, in our case, Afghans, for instance, prefer the Hungarian-Ukrainian border, Vietnamese, the Latvian and Russian border. As regards Syrians, and a part of the Afghans prefer the Finland-Russian border, the Arctic route, and I remember even nowadays the certain declarations from interviews migrants complaining of the cold in Finland, and they would prefer to go to the south. If to synthesize, who are the migrants, on the eastern borders of the European Union, we can say for sure that they are economic migrants. Some of them went on the path of naturalization, especially migrants from Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. What is commoner, for instance, on this border is the abuse of legal travel channels than illegal crossings. It is easier and cheaper to have fraudulent documents than to have a walk in the woods. Then the immigrants, smuggling of excised goods too, as alcohol, cigarettes, stolen cars, and so on and so forth. And the immigrants from the Eastern Partnership countries usually reside in Italy, Spain, Germany, some in Poland, Czechia, and the Baltic countries. A couple of indicators have been established by European Border Risk Analysis Network that is formed by all Eastern Partnership countries and Schengen associates, plus Russia. Russia should be in another way, but it's my fault. They established seven major indicators. Now I will show to you the figures for these indicators or associate indicators. Yes, I know. For instance, the quota for the eastern borders of the European Union in comparison to the total numbers is quite insignificant. If you would look at facilitators, it constitutes only 0.2%. Clandestine entries, 1.5%. The higher percentage refers to refusals of entry. But you know very well that refusals of entry are issued at the borders. In other words, people or migrants that enter the European Union, the number is less. And now, just a couple of ideas on the trends of development and the future of the migration process. The risk analysis for 2019 identified 3 levels for development of migration. It is about the likely, the possible, and the unknown. I think the most important thing related to it is to the unknown. Even there are 2 aspects mentioned here. The terrorist-related aspects, and incomplete information. But I guess, that this list, would be completed with other issues as well. Among the migration drivers, in the future, On the first place are the economic ones. Economic drivers in the country of origin, economic drivers in the country of destination, demography, it is climate change and policies. Even it is placed the last one, but it is not at least the most unimportant one. Possible shifts in migration paradigm also could occur and are likely to modify even them in the future. As regards migration management, the European Union has developed certain policies with partner countries, even they are neighboring one or the neighbors of the neighbors. This migration management approach focuses on intergovernmental cooperation, and the perception of migration is seen as a normal process. The key aim also is to be very proactive, and the key notion deals or tackles the holistic approach too. And the European Union has developed the migration management and developed it in a couple of basic documents or acts signed with its partners all over the world. Among them, I could mention the European Neighbourhood Policy, the Eastern Partnership Policy, and the last very comprehensive document is the European Global Strategy. Another issue that we have yet to take into consideration is that the bordering countries and partners all over the world seem to be transboundary occupiers of the European Union, even in terms of migration. And in conclusion, I'd like here to say that migration has or deals with aspects related to the human capital and going or moving to certain threats in the migration process. The eastern borders of the European Union are accessible, even permeable for illicit practices. The immigrants crossing the eastern borders chiefly are economic migrants. Migration happens in both directions, to the European Union and outside the European Union, especially if we speak about Russian ethnics from the Baltic states who do not have national acts of the Baltic states. Mainly it is the case of Latvia. As regards migration management, it seems that it needs more engagement, not only of the European Union, but of all the parties involved. Visa regime should be more humane. Then we need a global border dialogue, and why not? So we should strive at a migration governance, not only at European level, but a global level. And the risk that still exists is the dichotomy of schlechte Grenzen and rechte Grenzen. It is the political or geopolitical border that is considered a bad border, incorrect or unnatural border, and the cultural or civilizational border that is good, correct, and natural. And between schlechte Grenzen or rechte Grenzen aspects of the eastern borders of the European Union seem to have issues that could drive to push potential conflicts. with or without the will of the European Union. Thank you very much, and especially the moderator for her patience.
Thank you very much for invitation. This is a great pleasure and honor to be here. So special thanks goes to Dr. Marta Pachocka. And my topic is devoted mostly to the rise of the EU migration technology. So I will be talking mostly about the new electronic systems which are devoted mostly to external border control in the European Union. And I will be trying to be not too much technical because, as you probably know, this topic is usually associated with some electronic systems, and this does not sound friendly for us usually. And as we commonly know, over the last years, over the decade, the Union has been developing the large-scale centralized information systems, and they were mostly relevant for collecting, processing, and sharing information which would be relevant to security, migration, and external border control. But contemporary EU migration policy does not comprise mostly laws, policy measures. It is becoming more and more technological, so generally we can say that technology is playing more and more important role, and what's more, technology is not just a tool. Technology changes the meaning of migrants, because for the electronic systems they are just becoming numbers, and it also changes the nature of the borders because they are becoming more and more decentralized, or sometimes they become extraterritorialized or even privatized, because majority of the duties of the immigration control are currently based, for example, on the carriers. So also the definition of human body becomes quite different, because nowadays the systems treat it mostly as a kind of information storage device. So delegating tasks associated with migration onto the technological resources transforms the nature of these tasks. And nowadays, we can talk even about the migration machine or just migration technology, which may be a term which is used for technological systems which are used to register legal or illegal migrants, residents, to check people crossing the border, or just to automate the process of application for asylum or migration. So I will use this term in a rather practical sense to denote the migration management and regulating the flow of the people across borders. What are the main aspects which are associated with the current use of migration technology? Generally, we can say that this kind of technology is mostly affecting foreign nationals, not just the citizens of the European Union. However, there are some systems which are already operating, like Schengen Information System, which are also relevant to the citizens of the European Union. But generally, these systems are aimed at border control of the citizens, third country nationals who are seeking entry to the European Union. And there is a tendency for these systems that they are becoming more restrictive as well as more selective. So this is to say that not only the numbers of migrants who are crossing external borders are reduced, but also they are examined more carefully, which means they are examined in the way which is comfortable, which is aimed at the special needs of the member states. Also, the border control, which is using modern technology, is more and more focused on security, especially in times of the war on terror. So risk analyses are prepared and risk profiles are also constructed, and they become the main part of immigration policy or just various systems which are currently operating in the European Union. We can also say that these systems which are planned or which are operating are strongly interconnected with the integrated border strategy of the European Union. However, there is a problem with this strategy because it is serving two conflicting demands. First one, which is associated with the openness. So we should maintain our borders open, especially for economic reasons. So businessmen and tourists should have a possibility to get easy legal access to the European Union. On the other hand, we should take care of security and counteracting illegal migration and cross-border crime. And what's more, this is what I have said previously, the system treats human body as an information storage device. So it's more and more like a machine, which is not only comprising the policies, the administrative tasks, but also a technology which tries to read the required information from the human body, then process it or just use it, and finally produce a judgment what kind of status we should offer the migrant. So, as it is often said, the systems are working this way, that the human body is the universal ID card of the future, or in other words, the human body becomes a password for these systems. What are the current systems which are in use in the European Union, and what kind of systems are planned to be operational in the nearest future? The systems like Schengen Information System, Eurodac, or just Visa Information Systems are operating for more or less a decade, and they are commonly known for the users, but generally it is a tendency to reform them, to change them in the way that they will be more interoperable, so which seems that they will be able to communicate with each other. On the right side, there are new proposed systems which will be operational in the nearest future, which means 2020 or just 2021. And this is mostly entry-exit system and ETIAS, which were already mentioned by the representative of Frontex, or also by Dr. Jolanta Szymańska. So I will try to develop the idea, or just present the idea, which is associated with operation of these systems. As to the first one, which is called EES, or just entry-exit system, we can say that this should work like a kind of tracking tool, which will register entries and exits of all third country nationals in the Schengen area. So from 2020 or 2021, all the newcomers who are arriving to the Schengen area will be registered. And as to the scope of application, as we can see, this system will be applied only to third country nationals, no matter if they are visa exempt or if they are Schengen visa holders. EU citizens, resident card holders, or permit holders will be outside the scope of this technology. However, what is the main idea which lied behind the creation of such a system? Generally, it should help to deal with the increasing travelers' flows. So if we want to keep the speedy borders, we should, this is an idea which is shared by the European Commission, we should put more focus on the flow of tourists or travelers. So this means that there will be no stamps in the passports, because all will be registered electronically, so all the entries and exits. What's more, the main idea is to identify visa overstayers. Visa overstayers, this is to say people who remain on the territory of the European Union even though their visa has already expired. So during the migration crisis, it was suddenly realized that majority of people who are illegally staying in the European Union are visa overstayers. So people who generally arrive to the European Union legally, but nowadays their stay seems to be illegal. And what is more, the system will not be serving only migration management or just border management, because access will be granted for national law enforcement services and Europol. So this is to say, the system in fact will serve dual purposes, which means not only border control management, but also the law enforcement. And this is considered the first step towards full interoperability between the systems of the European Union, because on the basis of entry-exit records, there will be a possibility to state that the stay of a person is illegal, that, for example, somebody is an overstayer. So on this basis, we can produce a return decision. This return decision will be registered in the Schengen information system, and then when somebody is applying for a visa, visa information system and Schengen information system will be interoperable, so it can be possible to produce a negative decision. So as you can see, one negative record in one of the databases may serve for another negative record in other databases of the European Union. The scheduled operation will be decided to be 2020 or 2021. However, it also depends on the infrastructure possibilities of the European Union and possible costs. ETIAS, which is another system which is already planned, and in fact all the systems are expected to work in 2021, is a pre-travel security and irregular migration screening device. So this system is a bit different. It was also mentioned by the Frontex representative, and the idea behind ETIAS is to recognize all the people who are visa exempt, which means the scope of application is all visa exempt third country nationals. So no EU citizens are planned to be controlled this way. And as to the general idea, it sounds like all the people who are visa exempt who would like to arrive at the European Union will need a special authorization before their travel. So this system generally will not speed up border movement. It is mostly dedicated to security reasons, security objectives, because it is considered that we will be able to determine eligibility of all visa exempt third country nationals entering the Schengen area prior their arrival for a short stay. So nowadays it sounds like the British citizens after Brexit will also have to submit an authorization travel request before their travel to the European Union. And it is quite probable that British citizens will be not placed on the black visa list of the European Union, so they will be visa exempt. However, when arriving to the European Union, first, they will have to obtain ETIAS authorization. So when Theresa May was asked about that, she stated that that proposal sounds ridiculous. During last days, the European Commission has confirmed that British citizens will require ETIAS authorization before they come to the European Union, which is also associated with a fee which is currently on the level of €7. And this is considered to reduce the information gap on visa-exempt third country nationals, because it was suddenly realized that more than 1 billion persons may travel to the European Union without any visa. So these people may also comprise a high-risk group. Such was a statement from the European Commission. So this is why a kind of travel authorization will be required before arrival, prior to the arrival to the European Union. So this system is also considered a kind of new electronic visa for the travelers. However, according to the Commission, there is a huge difference between these two instruments. Finally, there is also another system which was already mentioned, ECRIS, but there is also another version of ECRIS which is devoted to the citizens of the European Union, and another version will be devoted to TCNs. So scope of application will be non-EU nationals who are convicted in the European Union, or just stateless persons also convicted in the EU. So it will be possible to exchange the information which is stored in the national databases, which is referring to third country nationals who are considered persons who were convicted. Generally, this system is also scheduled to be operational in 2020. And when we look at this architecture of all these systems which are operable or will be operable in the nearest future, it sounds like it's constantly expanding. And what is especially important is that interoperability makes all these systems to be merged into one. So interoperability means that systems like EES, VIS, or ETIAS will be sooner or later interoperable. They will communicate with each other, and it will be even hard to finally state if the systems are really devoted to the external border control or rather law enforcement purposes. So trying to summarize all this up, what will be the future development and what are the general remarks or just conclusions? European Union is putting more and more emphasis on the pre-entry screening technology. So it means that sorting people at the very beginning of the process of arriving to the European Union is becoming more and more relevant. So systems like ETIAS or visa information systems will be complementary, and what's more, the Union consequently carries out a strategy of pushing borders out, which means we try to externalize border control as far as possible from the physical borders, from the European Union. So that's why ETIAS and visa information system will be complementary, and they will cooperate, especially with this task in mind. Individual data collection, which is often referred to as machine-readable bodies, it seems like that human body will be the main storage of information for these systems, as they are in their majority based on biometric technology. So biometric characteristics will be captured, will be compared, and interoperability is also built with the aim of comparing human characteristics. Finally, migration, terrorism, and crime concerns are merged because all these systems are in fact built with the dual purpose. First, external border control, and at the same time, law enforcement. So this is why more and more services are involved, and they have granted access to them. And finally, the principle of interoperability between different databases means that sooner or later, these bases will have no problem with exchanging data on people who are arriving, on people who are newcomers. So we can expect this around 2020, so this is not a long time. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope there will be some nice discussion.
We want to have very pointed questions to three speakers, and I see 3 hands raised, so I'll collect these 3 questions, starting from the lady in the back. And then I'll give the opportunity to all speakers to address those questions briefly.
One second, maybe I will introduce myself. Marta Górczyńska from Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights. I would like to bring more human rights perspective here, asking about illegal pushbacks that we have to address at some point. We were talking about implementing law, policies, practices, and technologies at Eastern EU borders in order to protect our external borders, which is, of course, an important issue to deal with. But also, I think equally important is to make sure that all people that are in need of international protection and try to enter these Eastern EU borders applying for asylum are allowed to do so. And we have the case, and we have reports, we have testimonies, we have European Court of Human Rights first judgments stating that these countries are violating this law on accessing asylum. We have the first judgment in the case MA versus Lithuania, stating that Lithuania was in breach of this law. We have 4 cases pending right now against Poland. So my question is how European Union should address this issue to make sure that the borders, the external borders, are protected, but at the same time that people that would like to apply for asylum are not illegally pushed back to countries that are not safe for them. Yeah, thank you very much.
Maciej Piklikiewicz, PhD, Warsaw School of Economics and George Washington University of Seattle. I've got a question concerned to Mr. Cesarz. I liked your presentation. I'd like to know one thing. The relations of the America and European Union on migration, especially in the case now, the case which is very interesting now, in that words of Venezuela and the Madurian case here. If you can say about it, I'll be very grateful.
Thank you very much for all presentations. It was a pleasure to listen, but I also have actually 2 brief questions to Dr. Cesarz. I'm Katerina Krachmalova, Poland, Ukraine, so I was already been introduced. So my first question goes about also human rights and human rights of, say, people belonging to some religious minorities, because, for example, we do have this question in Ukraine. So are there any exemptions from obligation to give this, let's say, biological data for people who, due to their religious beliefs, actually are opposing submitting information like this? And second question, what are the safeguards in case of abuse and in case of mistake? Because, for example, I know cases that some people were put in the Interpol databases for political reasons. So in case, if something goes wrong with these systems, what are the possibilities to appeal and correct the wrong? Thank you very much.
So what I suggest is that we have several questions that just choose and pick and use your brief time to address as many of you as you can, so that also each of you has the opportunity to join the discussion.
Thank you very much for the question. Generally, you asked about the difference between American and European approach towards immigrants. Generally, the main difference is that according to American system, every newcomer is treated as a potential illegal migrant unless he proves that it's different. So that's why when we, for example, apply for American visa, in fact, it's just a promise that we will be let in, but the final say is always on the side of the border guard. So we can also say that a similar principle applies in Europe, because when somebody is applying for a Schengen visa, it does not mean automatically that the person will be let in, because when you are granted visa, it just means that you meet the requirements to be entered, to be let in, but on the day of the issuance of the visa, not on the day of the border crossing. So that's the main difference. I would say that there is no such a presumption that somebody is illegal migrant in the European Union system. So that's the main difference. However, as all these systems like EUS or ETIAS, they are American imports. In fact, ETIAS, it's a ESTA American system in European version, or just ETA Canadian or Australian system, as it works quite effectively, which means it enables to reduce the numbers of migrants crossing the external borders. It was also established by the European Union, so that's the main problem. And as to the religious minorities, I think that you have mentioned the biometric technology which they are posing. Generally, the approach which is practiced by the EU is systemic. which means there is no possibility, it's unlawful to store data about religious or ethnic minorities. I mean, biometric which is captured may not serve towards profiling, which will be used for sorting people on the basis of the ethnicity or religious issues. However, generally, it is not taken into consideration that some people may oppose, which means you have to provide biometric data if you want to be let in. So biometric passports are required now by the European Union, and if you don't have one, it will be not possible to enter European Union. So the same applies to USA, Canada, and this is becoming the reality. So there is no other way, I'm afraid. But we know there are some religious objections. There are some problems with biometric characteristics which can be provided by some people due to some illness. And there are also ethical problems with children. Should we take biometric characteristics from little children? Is it ethical or not? And to be honest, we can ask every policeman and he will confirm that biometric characteristics of children are not stable. So this is also associated with another problem that was mentioned, that is this whole machine, is this whole technology reliable? Generally, yes. However, if the percentage of mistaken decision was on the level of 1%, it means thousands of people on the airport waiting for, let's say, any kind of legal advice. What should I do now because I was excluded? So generally they are reliable, but there is no a clear alternative. What will happen if the system will fail? Thank you.
I'd like to focus on the first question raised here on human rights and concerning the international protection of people, especially related to the pushbacks for asylum seekers. For sure, in the world, there are two approaches related to it. Either we have more security or more human rights granted by national legislations. And in fact, it is a confrontation between two universal visions. The norms on security and human rights obviously are general, universal, and are applicable to any potential asylum seeker. My subjective point of view is that there are many pushbacks, especially in the case of asylum seekers, due to incomplete data, incomplete information, or lack of that information. Because those pushbacks are real case studies, concrete situations with which authorities have to deal. Obviously, on the other hand, there are happy ends for those asylum seekers who can demonstrate for what they have come or what they would like. For the time being, it seems that this vacuum on information and data collection would be a subject for future, especially in treating asylum seeking. Thank you.
Okay, so I will also refer to your question. Although this question is complicated, I would say, what I want to say at the beginning, I think that the clear priority for member states in the European Union is the issue of security. The priority is to limit migration flows, not to allow all the people to apply for asylum. I think European Union institutions already have some tools to evaluate the way how member states protects its borders and how they implement European asylum rules. and the Schengen evaluation mechanism is one of the examples. But frankly speaking, I think that in this special case, it's completely and very difficult to create incentives for member states to implement correctly European law because it's not so easy to prove actually that they abuse in particular cases European law. And of course, the individual cases in cards are one of the tool also. So we can think, of course, about future solutions. And when we can hear, for example, Macron's proposals of harmonization of European asylum policy, that would probably enable to better control implementation of asylum law, but frankly speaking, I'm not optimistic about this project. I think this harmonization idea is really first unclear, and second, in current situation in the European Union, rather implementable. So, so I'm not really sure if we can create something more than we already have.
Thank you very much. I think this allows us to conclude this particular session, and we'll move directly, as Dr. Pachocka mentioned, to the next session. So thank you very much for your presence here. Thank you very much for your great presentations, and let's give the floor to the next panelist. Thank you.